Firstly, John chapter 1, verses beginning from 1 to 5. The origins of the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being what has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. The first words of John's Gospel, in the beginning, in Greek it can be said en arche, represent a transparent allusion to the certain account in Genesis chapter 1. In the Septuagint, or Greek translation of Hebrew Bible, the book of Genesis begins with the identical phrase. And as we move forward in the prologue, it is difficult to escape the conclusion that the John story of Jesus is meant to be studied and situated within the broader story of Israel's God as recounted in Genesis and Exodus. Throughout the early chapters of Genesis, the God of Israel is shown creating, sustaining, and entering into covenant with humanity. Just as the first creation account takes place in the beginning, where God creates by speaking light, land, sea, and all the living creatures into existence. We can see it in Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 to 31. So the Gospel of John pictures the Word, which is Logos in Greek, as the one through whom everything was created. John chapter 1, verse 3. Further, the Word is both a prover of life and the light of humanity, which shines forth into the darkness. Chapter 1, verses 4 to 5. These parallels, which are more clearly seen if one has a working knowledge of Greek language, we are just going to see in a moment. Given similar vocabulary as well as the broader concepts at work, it is difficult to ignore that the intentional connections drawn between Genesis chapter 1 and John chapter 1. Firstly, we can see in Genesis chapter 1, the word in the beginning is there, which in Septuagint would be en arche, which is the same for Gospel of John chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning, en arche. Secondly, we see it is over there, it is written God said, which is loge. And in John chapter 1 verses 1 to 4, we see the word, which is logos. It opens with the word. NRK ein po logos. Logos, the word. Thirdly, we can see that it is written, let there be light, which is about force. And in John's Gospel, we see, and the life was the light. Life was the light. Again, the same phraseology, same vocabulary is used. Fourthly, we see that it is written, God creates living creatures. Again and again, the word Zoe is used. And in John's Gospel as well, in him was life. In him was life. Again, the same word Zoe is used. These first few verses detail the origin and creative activity of the word, but also speak to the word's identity as much more complex issue for the modern reader in the light of history of Christian interpretation. We faced with the phrase, the word was God, in chapter 1 verses 1c. Many devotional readers of the Bible are quick to equate this statement with the fully orthodox Christian confession of Jesus' identity. But this would be a mistake. The contemporary Christian understanding of Jesus draws upon what is known as a Chalcedonian definition, which we will soon see in another video. What is the Chalcedonian definition? The confession established by the Council of Chalcedon in 451 Common Era details the dual nature of Jesus, also known today as the hypostatic union. This confession sees Jesus is both fully divine and fully human at the same time. While it is safe to say that the conceptual basis of the Chalcedonian definition was strongly influenced by the Gospel of John, the reverse is not likely. In fact, it is quite unlikely that this highly developed theological construct would be available within the thought world of the author of the Gospel according to St. John. Here we are presented with a common challenge and an opportunity to read the Gospel of John with a greater clarity and attention to detail. We cannot assume that a widely held contemporary theological view is found in its fully developed form in the pages of the New Testament. This is an error commonly made by the casual or devotional reader of the Bible. And while it is understandable, it begs for serious corrections. The evolution of Christian devotion led to the development of many theological doctrines. And while the New Testament served as the source material for those developments, the authors of the New Testament worked with the ideas and the assumptions of their own time. The Gospel of John was likely written by a Jewish follower of Jesus, living toward the later part of the first century, maybe around 95 to 100 CE, Common Era. Given the particulars of this context, it is difficult to imagine a first century Jew conceiving of Jesus as both fully divine and fully human at the same time. Rather, this view took several centuries of Christian reflections to crystallize. Thus, the phrase, "the Word was God," should not be regarded as a full statement of Chalcedonian Christology. For our purpose, we understand John chapter 1 verse 1c and similar passages in the Gospel as signifying that Jesus is the unique representation of the Father to humanity. In other words, all the realities of Israel's God are fully and mysteriously present in Jesus Christ. To affirm more than this would be unwarranted given the limitations of the author's historical, social, and religious contexts. In John chapter 1 verse 5, we read that the light shines in the darkness and the darkness does not overcome it. In Greek, the word katalabein is used, katalabein. Here the Greek word katalambano likely has a double meaning, though more of the English translations are forced to settle for the one term over another. When dealing with double meaning over here, it can be difficult for a modern translator to convey the intended ideas with the economy of words. The verb katalambano is often used for overcoming through victory or making something one's own possession, but it can also be used for processing information, as in to understand or to grasp. Throughout the story, the reader encounters instances in which both these nuances emerge and prove the statement of 1 verse 5 to be true. For example, characters approach Jesus by night and display an inability to comprehend elements of Jesus' origin, identity, and mission. For example, we see Nicodemus in John chapter 3 and the arresting party in John chapter 18. The cover of darkness in these episodes symbolically represent a darkened understanding. Scenes such as these validate the claim that the darkness has not understood the light. The nuance related to overcoming through victory is also evident, as the powers of darkness, symbolically represented by the opposition to Jesus and by death itself, are not able to overcome Jesus, as he both defeats the death and emerges bodily from the tomb. In very concrete ways, throughout the narrative, human and non-human representatives of darkness are unable to either comprehend or to overcome Jesus, the light of humanity. This type of double meaning is a hallmark of John's writing style, as we will see in the subsequent further sessions. In these first 5 verses, the reader is exposed to ideas and terminology that will emerge again and again throughout the whole John's story of Jesus Christ.